My fellow Americans, over the past 2 years, certainly within the last several days and hours, I have asked myself, what does it mean to be president?
Hi everybody! Hi Nadia! Say hello to Nadia. We want to preview House of Cards Season 5, that's right around the corner. And we want to break down Frank Underwood's final speech at the very end of Season 4 when he declares war on ISIS/ICO. Right. And the reason that you're here is because you have a PhD in Discourse Analysis, which means that you are an expert on breaking down political speeches.
Yes, it means I'm an expert at breaking down the ways of persuasion of political speeches.
It's even better. I'm glad you're here.
Me too.
Let's go! Let's go!
What does true leadership look like? It's a question many of you have asked yourselves as November approaches.
He begins the speech without trying to get the involvement of the audience. This is technically called captatio benevolentia. Try to say it, that's Latin.
Can you say it again?
Captatio benevolentia. That's right. So that's Latin.
Oh, my first try, incredible.
Yes, that was very well done. That's Latin for saying you're trying to take the benevolence of capture the benevolence of your audience. Typically in political speeches, you would start by flattering your audience in some way.
It is a privilege to stand here in this National Museum in the ancient city of Jerusalem.
You carry with you an extraordinary legacy of more than 6 decades of friendship between the United States and Israel.
My friends, I'm deeply humbled by the opportunity to speak for a third time before the most important legislative body in the world, the U.S. Congress.
So just to recap, Frank Underwood, he's on the campaign trail, the national elections, right? And it's not going very well. So him and his wife / running mate, they decide that they can't be bothered convincing people to vote for them and to like them. So they just decide to declare war for political purposes.
We don't submit to terror. We make the terror.
Right. Who wants to win the hearts and minds of people nowadays?
Right now, as I sit in this chair, in this office, where so many of my predecessors have steered our nation through turbulent times.
He presents himself as the heir of a very long line of very important presidents and very respected presidents.
Right. It's not just me, it's like the office of the president.
Absolutely.
It's not the person. Okay.
I realize that this job is one that transcends politics and rhetoric.
And then he presents himself as someone who's sincere. He goes beyond politics and beyond rhetoric. He says it clearly.
So the subtext, he just takes the subtext and just feeds, the spoon feeds that.
Is Donald Trump an intellectual? Trust me, I'm like a smart person.
It has a very funny name, this kind of argument. It means self-eating, autophagia. It means you're contradicting what you're saying at the same time that you're saying it. It's like a policeman standing on a stage saying it's forbidden to stand on a stage.
Entrusted to anyone who sits behind this desk is something far more elemental, the very survival of our nation.
Okay, so why is he moving beyond rhetoric? He says because it's not about words, it's about survival, the very survival of the nation. That's
right, he's in charge of the life and death of all Americans. He may remind you of someone who says, I alone can fix it.
Nobody knows the system better than me. Which is why I alone can fix it.
Yes. And he presents himself as the one who can take the strong decisions and the important decisions.
Right, because he wants to present himself as the president, while his opponent, he's not the president, he's just like a candidate.
And I, as your president, must confront the storm before us.
It's particularly important when he makes what is technically called as an appeal to authority. When he says, I am the president, it means he's positioning himself in the position of authority, and therefore he has the power, the duty to be doing what he's doing.
Right. I don't think it's an appeal to authority, and it's my channel, so please don't argue with it.
Okay. Of course. You're just arguing with a PhD, but of course.
That storm is terror. More dangerous and unpredictable than any hurricane. It has endangered us abroad. It has endangered us at home.
But the way that he's describing terror as a hurricane, it's like a natural disaster that you can't control.
It's inevitable. So first of all, you can
You
see...
have to protect yourself.
Yes, but he has to protect you. You don't have to protect yourself. That's the whole point, and that's the whole point of his ethos as the president. And this is how he introduces terror. He says, I, as your president, have the duty of protecting you from terror.
We hoped for a peaceful solution, but terror is blind to reason. So, unfortunately, we must now move beyond reason.
I can feel like the dread creeping in. It's just horrible, horrible.
This is technically called appeal to fear. It's one of the most classical arguments from ancient Greece. It's trying to appeal to your emotions, your most basic emotions, and fear is one of the most
fortunately,
easy emotions to appeal to.
Fortunately, no one does that today.
No politician today would ever dare to do that.
No,
absolutely not.
Not at all. No.
Ah.
No.
Who?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Any example? With natural catastrophe, he's trying to reinforce the idea that you cannot reason with terror, you cannot talk to them, you cannot do anything with them, and therefore it is time to move beyond reason. This is the way he's trying to persuade his audience that they cannot be reasonable. You remember after 9/11, Bush made this historic speech about America declaring war on terror, which is an incredible thing to see today.
Why?
Because you know what happened afterwards, and you see the whole Congress standing up and
shame, shame, shame.
Because Bush sounds so smart compared to whoever is in office today. And Bush tried to convince his audience through reason. He gave a number of reasons why they should be going to war now.
Al-Qaeda is to terror what the mafia is to crime. But its goal is not making money. Its goal is remaking the world and imposing its radical beliefs on people everywhere.
Gave conditions, in fact, to Al-Qaeda back then and said,
they will hand over the terrorists or they will share in their fate.
It's the exact opposite. Frank Underwood is not giving any ultimatum to, he's saying we're now going straight beyond reason.
Right.
Whereas Bush tried to at least have a reasonable discussion with unreasonable people by saying if you're going to do ABC, we're not going to war. But if you're not going to do it, then we're coming at you. Frank is so beyond anything reasonable in our real world that as a president he doesn't even try to reason or to discuss.
I think it works story-wise because House of Cards is like a heightened reality, so they took Bush's speech and all the arguments for the war on terror and just like made them beyond reason.
Exactly. So what we have to remember now in every sentence we're going to hear is that he is going to give the list of the unreasonable things he's about to do. So that becomes the premise of everything it's about to come.
Okay.
If the captors call again, we will not answer. The time for conversation is over, no matter the consequences. Regardless of whether James Miller is released or not, rescued or not, killed or not, ICO will be destroyed.
So even if they give them what they wanted to begin with, I'm already beyond reason. That's it. I can't move back to be reasonable. Even if they become reasonable.
Exactly.
I would like to be reasonable. I would love to be reasonable. Just love it. But
So once again, the reasonable thing would have been to have a conversation. The reasonable thing would have been to answer if they call. The reasonable thing, So, but because we know, because you said it, and that's the premise, that we're moving beyond reason.
Because they are not reasonable. And here in the show, they make a point showing that the head of ICO/ISIS is surprisingly reasonable. He wants to cut a deal. And also when he says, unfortunately, we have to move beyond reason, it's like, again, the hurricane. It's like...
There's no choice.
No choice. And this is totally fictional, not based on
totally
anything.
Fictional. Who would ever talk like that?
We are at war.
It's like a statement in itself disconnected from everything that he said. Doesn't say, so we must be at war, so we must go to war. He pauses and said, we are at war.
Exactly.
He changes like the cadence even of the speech. So
he changes, in fact, the causality. Instead of being at war, the fact of going to war being a consequence of what he has said, it becomes a premise. We are at war. And therefore, I am not going to be reasonable. We're not going to answer. We're not going to...
He's not even talking about what good will come out by moving beyond reason. We'll waterboard even if it doesn't work.
Right.
That's kind of beyond reason. Oh, we'll kill the terrorists' families even if it doesn't work.
Right.
So...
Remember the Bush speech we spoke about before? And he gave a lot of reasons why, in the name of American values, they should go to war.
And night fell on a different world. A world where freedom itself is under attack.
But here, we're even beyond values, we're beyond reason, we're beyond everything. And the fact that he needs to persuade an entire country that his decision is right, and we can ask ourselves whether he's doing it properly or not.
Right. I think this is a very, very harsh criticism on the whole rhetoric about the war on terror.
You mean like the writers of the series are trying to criticize actual politicians?
You're right, it makes no sense.
It will be a war more total than anything we have waged thus far in the fight against extremism. Soldiers will die. Civilians may die. There will be pain. There will be suffering.
This is, rhetorically speaking, a very bad way of trying to persuade your audience. You don't try to persuade the American people to go to war by telling them they're going to die, they're going to suffer, it's going to be terrible.
It's going to be horrible.
And it's going to be horrible, and it's going to be the worst thing you've ever seen.
And you're going to lose so much, you'll be tired of losing.
And here it's very interesting to see the difference between Underwood and Bush. Bush started by saying, we have known wars, but this one is different. We have known pain, but this time is different.
Okay.
We have known loss, but this time it's different.
Americans have known the casualties of war, but not at the center of a great city on a peaceful morning. Americans have known surprise attacks, but never before on thousands of civilians.
And so he really tries to make a case on how that time on 9/11, everything was different from what it was before, and therefore it's compelling in a way. They have to go to war.
And
but
people understand why 9/11
was different. Exactly.
Yeah.
It was one of a kind.
Yes.
But here, Underwood, he's trying to say basically, this is going to be horrible, this is going to be the end, this is going to destroy everything you know until now, and therefore we should go to war, which makes no sense whatsoever.
Right.
No.
And we're going to war because they took a hostage journalist. This is you compare this to 9/11, it's a little bit weird.
Of course, it doesn't make any sense, but as we know, he's moving, he's going to be beyond reason.
Right.
He said it himself. But if we think that he's actually trying to persuade an audience who's watching from home, then this is really a bad part of the speech. This is not persuasive at all.
We will be confronted with the most horrific aspects of humanity. We will confront the inhuman, evil itself.
Like the writers are telling us, this character, he is the face of evil, not whatever ICO, the head of ICO and stuff. It's the President of the United States, and I can't even imagine how a President of the United States can be evil. I don't know, it seems...
No.
But we will triumph. It is not a war we will lose.
Right.
Then who is he talking about? Who is we?
He's talking about him and his wife/running
Maybe, or the Americans. Yeah, let's say that this is the only part which is kind of convincing, but all in all, that would be considered, if it were a real political speech in the real world, that would be a very bad speech.
In the real world, we don't have a president that is crazy or unreasonable.
Who makes bad speeches, for instance. Like, absolutely not.
I'm really rich. I'll show you that in a second. I like China. I just sold an apartment for $15 million to somebody from China. Am I supposed to dislike it?
Hey, look at this! Donald Trump! Donald Trump! Donald Trump taking down Michigan! Oh, my God! The hostile takeover of Donald Trump!
Green Acres is the place to be.
Obviously, the reason that it's an unconvincing speech is because the audience is not the American people in the show watching the president and being convinced. We, the viewers of the show, we are basically the audience.
We can assume that the authors are trying to criticize the ways in which America goes to war and the ways in which America chooses to deal with politics, terror, and war. All the layers of good political speech, which would be convincing, are taken off to show what is at heart and at the very base of these decisions.
Right, so we're meant as viewers to feel very uncomfortable. So the speech works in that way.
Yes.
God bless America and all of those who believe in freedom and democracy.
YouTube's monetization plan is not reasonable, so we too must move beyond reason. And we have to have a Patreon page. And those of you who will not support us, you will face evil itself. So you should definitely go to patreon.com/GOTAcademy or click the link in the description. And Nadia, this has been a lot of fun. We'll do it again. And we'll see you all next time.
Yeah.
Bye, buddy.